Hello and welcome to Gone to Shite, the only podcast in the universe to be called and Gone to Shite. On this week's show, we're going to be discussing a time before games were shite, and we're going to be talking about the legendary game that was Doom and is Doom. I suppose it's the thing we're going to be talking about it a little more in depth in another episode and stuff about the tech industry, but like one of the things at the moment, without putting the big downer on things at the first getting started, I suppose people might have noticed that there's a lot of layoffs in the tech industry, and particularly in the gaming industry over the last while, with Sony announcing, I think it's 900 staff being let go, but like there's other places, like it's been going on for maybe about last year, maybe 2 years, but like there's quite a lot of people being let go from the gaming industry in their thousands. AAA gaming seems to be failing a lot of games that should be succeeding. It might, to an outsider, it might look like, gaming is on the near collapse or another kind of collapse of the industry. I don't think so. I think it's just, it's smaller games are doing better. It's one of the things with gaming, like the indie game scene is thriving. There's a lot of really innovative games coming out. I think the AA gaming sector is doing well, and kind of ones that would be B or C list games are doing very well.
Mm-hmm. Such as?
Deep Rock Galactic would be one. Like, even you seem like I've been playing Brotato.
Yes, Brotato. Yes.
I think I've put in 200 fucking hours.
Honest to God, it's nearly approaching fucking the Binding of Isaac levels of sort of obsession with you, I think, at this stage.
But like a lot of the gaming industry, the biggest kind of, I suppose, not failure, because you can't say it's a failure in any way, but Bethesda's Starfield. I can't even fucking remember what it's called, but they're basically their Skyrim in space didn't really do too well. It's a lot of people that I've been reading things are saying it was a bit boring. You can hear the cat agreed there behind. So it's like AAA gaming industry, I think, is in a bit of trouble because they're just really knocking out the same thing over and over again. They're not being really innovative. They've been focused on graphics over gameplay. Yeah, I think. But like people like, especially with mobile games,
that's
like
the thing.
there's a whole generation that grew up with mobile gaming that.
It doesn't matter how slick it might look if it doesn't have the sort of the addictive quality or the repeatability or the game playability or whatever. It's just
and but like, I mean, we'll talk about that later on, because I think there is a bit of to understand where things are today, you have to kind of understand the past, and not like, I mean, this is the thing, I suppose it nearly comes across as a clickbaity title. I don't mean it to be, but it's like the gaming industry. I think there's loads of fantastic games out there, and there continues to be, like, there'll always be creative people that'll make fucking brilliant games regardless. But when you look back at the birth of a lot of this stuff, I think you have to kind of you have to look at Doom. For people who aren't familiar with Doom, it was a first-person shooter, the early 90s, created by a group of guys called id Software, which is John Carmack and John Romero, probably the two most famous people that were involved with it. It was basically one of the first-person shooters. It definitely created deathmatch. It had modding in it for the first time. John Carmack who was the lead programmer, who created the Doom engine. And now, I mean, the thing is, if you look at kind of first-person shooter gaming nowadays, it would not be where it is without like the development of these engines. Yeah. This is in a time where it was like 8-bit fucking 2D pixels and stuff kind of running around. The dog is chewing away on some squeaky toy there fucking in the background.
Just in case you can hear it.
But it's to render what they had, what looked like 3D to people in those engines, it was all flat. So it was like, there was an awful lot of ingenuity, an awful lot of smarts went into an awful lot of fucking kind of like innovation. in that, which led on to, and as well with John Carmack being a hacker, and his whole thing was that he wanted people to basically have access to their stuff so people could mod the game. They loved that people were modding the game because they saw it with other things. But I wasn't getting ahead of myself there. But there was just an awful lot of stuff in the first Doom. With it, you were saying you played it, did you? Not when it came out.
Well, actually, I suppose around it would have been in the mid-90s. I suppose I had a SNES at the time, and I think it was one of the games that was on it that kind of came with it or something like that. So I had goes on it, like, but it wouldn't have been a game that, like, I was very, very much more so a Mario universe type person. You know, that was my thing. First-person shooters weren't really for me. I enjoyed it, but it wouldn't have been a thing where I would have sat down and played all levels. I would have, you know, jumped in and played a few games here and there, and then went, back to Mario or back to Yoshi or whatever. Like,
well, it's the thing with, like, when you're saying about Nintendo would have had a massive influence. As well, before I get going, a lot of stuff that I know about, like, the history of Doom, it's kind of fresh in my mind because I just finished listening to the audiobook called Masters of Doom. And it's fucking an amazing book. It's narrated by Will Wheaton. And I was only saying to you, yeah, I know a lot of people put hate on him. I quite like him, and as well, it's narrated really, really well. But
he's an actor.
Yeah, I know, but like still people are always like, who will we? You know, but it's just a really, really good story about like these kind of I suppose. I was going to say renegades, but like outsiders that came together to create a gaming company and change the face of gaming, really. Like John Carmack and John Romero, the main focus of the story. The two of them, they were basically like John Carmack was the brain, say, behind all the development thing. John Romero was like a designer. Right. But I'm jumping around. Fucking trying not to do a fucking whole background on kind of like, you know, or if you want to read the Masters of Doom or listen to it, go off and do that. But it's with the Nintendo thing, they're all. Obviously, Mario was massive in the 80s. Everyone was trying to do the thing, but no one could really translate that to PC gaming or Apple gaming at the time. It was very, very hard to do. And it was Carmack had a go at it, and he managed to do it. It was something like fucking Johnny in infringement or copyright infringement hell. So when they made this game, which was like a copy of the first Mario thing on the PC or on might have been Apple II or something like that, they sent it to Nintendo saying, hey, look, we could port your game to PC, which is going to be an emerging market in the future. And like Nintendo were like, oh no, thank you very much, but like, you know, they were very impressed with like what you've done and stuff. But you know, they were like, it's hard to look at Doom and say, oh, it came from Mario, but it's like everything came from Mario
pretty much at
the time. Like people, and like Mario was itself at the time fucking very innovative. Like you had before that, like fucking going from Pong to kind of like Space Invaders, Asteroids. Pac-Man was a massive jump. I remember like Pac-Man was like, holy shit.
I know, it was like so realistic. Look at the ghosts.
People were like fucking insane about Pac-Man, but then it was like then like Nintendo came along. It was just fucking unbelievable.
But I saw, speaking of Pac-Man, actually, before you go on there, like, I think people sometimes nowadays, they don't realise the actual impact that Pac-Man had. There used to be Pac-Man tables for like restaurants and pubs and stuff like that. Like one of my abiding memories of like being a kid was like wanting to go to a particular pub. This doesn't reflect well on my parents, the Haven Hotel. It was a hotel, and it was like they had this Pac-Man table that you could just like put your drinks on and play Pac-Man. And I was like, I just want to go there, and it made me sound like a right alcoholic when I was like 5.
I used to do that. There was Egan's in town, and it was.
They had a Pac-Man table in there.
They used to give me Sidona, trying to trick me into thinking that it was cider.
But that's thinking back, like, I mean, what parent to do that nowadays? Going, oh yeah, look, you're drinking alcohol there. Let's sit in the pub. It's just so it'd be unheard of, like, you know. Don't you love the 80s?
Yeah, but like, remember there was like this sort of Pac-Man fever, and wasn't there like a Pac-Man cartoon as well? I
think there was, and sure, there's all the spin-offs, Miss Pac-Man and all.
Yeah, I think Miss Pac-Man was even more popular than Pac-Man. Over in America anyway. But yeah, there was cartoons, and I remember there was like my sister, who would be a good, over fucking 15 years older, like she was playing, there was like a they tried to bring Pac-Man back probably in the early 2000s.
Kind of a 3D version. It was like it was still kind of like a side scroller game, but it was 3D version of Pac-Man.
It was a platformer, It was kind of like Super Mario Sunshine, I suppose, or something like that, or Crash Bandicoot. And it was really, really, really good. I don't think it did great. Like, it didn't fucking turn them into
win
like
awards
the
or
Sonic
like that.
the Hedgehog or anything. But,
but it got people like her sister, as you said, playing, and she would have been in her. I won't say her age, but she would have been a grown adult in her middle age nearly at that stage, a married housewife. 30s. No, it's
40s.
Little bit,
maybe.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
But it's just never really. But yeah, Doom.
Yes.
But
back to Doom.
Yeah, but Doom, like it's like it is the fucking the quintessential first person shooter. Like the guys at id Software, they that's the cat getting down disgust.
He's just running away.
But they had they were fucking around. Carmack came up with another engine, and they decided that they were going to remake a game, Castle Wolfenstein. They did it in 3D. And that did really, really well. Another thing as well where they're really innovative, what was doing, there was a crowd at the time that was doing basically shareware. So the whole thing was that they were just putting games out there and saying, oh, you can donate. But then they started noticing, well, gamers are they're fond of piracy and not leaving money, kind of tips for it. So what they started doing was say, you get the first game for free. Or first level for free, and then you'd have to pay to get the rest of the levels to download.
So I suppose it introduced the whole thing of you sort of it's almost like a drug dealer. You kind of get the basic level, and then you have to pay to unlock.
But this was the start of the internet as well. Yeah. So as well with Doom, I suppose it started LAN gaming as well, and then it would have went on. I can't remember what it would have been with Quake, but with the internet, with online death matches. But the big thing was the modding, because when they did it with, I can't remember if it was with Wolfenstein, people started doing Star Wars mods on it, and when they saw it, other crowds would be like, "Oh fuck, we're going to get sued," or they were like, "This is really, really cool." So they encouraged the community to get into modding. So. They released a lot of the files for it, and they did it with Doom. So there's still to this day people playing Doom. It's I think they're called WAD files. So people can totally and utterly construct it. What the fuck is it called? Oh, I can't. Oh, I have to tell you that it's on the desktop. I downloaded it. No, it just had Doom there. But oh god, it's going to drive me mad. There is a really hyper gory version of Doom that people are still working on. The modern community are still working on. It might be Ultimate Doom. No, it's not Ultimate Doom. See, there's so many. But no, see, there's millions of mods to put it in. People have just got, but it's just how it's still going today.
Yeah.
And there's mods of Alien. And stuff in it, the engine is so no one's going to do that. You can't people do mods on Skyrim and stuff like that as well, because Bethesda were pretty much good with that stuff as well at first, whereas now I don't know if you can mod, but the mods are only available within the Bethesda
universe, I suppose, or toolkit and stuff. But
the deathmatch stuff was totally new. No one ever thought that you could kind of do. So it was you could hook up computers, and that really was the birth of the esports as well.
Yeah, was that kind of I suppose LANs rather than sort of over the internet?
LANs, yeah. But sure, the internet was.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It wouldn't have been. We were still on dial-up as such at that stage. There was no way you were going to be able to.
But people got into this whole thing, and as well the gaming thing at the time, especially with Doom, because it was an adult.
Yeah,
kind of thing. It seemed to be aimed more at adults. It was very, very gory.
It was gory, and it was a lot of jump scares and all the rest. Yeah, it certainly wasn't for your 4 or 5 year olds.
And then John Romero came out, and he was a rock star. He had long hair, and they all were. And when they started making money, they were all buying Ferraris and stuff. So he probably would have been one of the first big names, I think, well known names to come out of gaming. Where it became a celebrity thing in the 90s. It kind of backfired on him a little bit at them, because it's the same. Once people know your name, you're always going to get a certain amount of people that are going to hate on you.
The haters,
I've always been quite fond of John Romero. I always at the time I thought, oh my god, this guy is cool. When I was a kid.
He's super cool.
Because all that you had before, especially over on our side of the world, was you had like Amstrad and Spectrum. And
yeah, so you had like Alan Sugar and you had Bill Gates and stuff like that.
But not even that. You had like, it was guys like fucking remember Codemasters and stuff. It was guys programming stuff in the rooms. Like, I mean, not that this is like what they were doing as well. Like at this stage, all gaming companies were indie game companies. No one was really, apart from Microsoft, and even Microsoft wasn't a big fucking
wasn't a big player at that stage. No, not at all.
So you had like all these, they were like indie companies. There were small companies that were doing things. Gaming was on the fringe, and then Doom fucking exploded. And I think around the same time you had Street Fighter 2 was doing well. Well, you see, the thing is, arcade games were doing well, but it was like, then you had like the console games were doing well, but like there was very little gaming on PC or Mac. So this was a whole new fucking thing as well. You forget to explain these things in case there's people that weren't around then or weren't familiar with it, because I suppose you had these strands that around the 80s was the home computer, and that generally weren't PCs, that were like things that you put tapes in or floppy disks in. And
so the likes of your Commodores, your Amstrads, your Sinclairs, that kind of thing.
And you had all these, I suppose, homebrew games. There wasn't like massive companies, so you had these small that were knocking out games every couple of weeks, and the guys that were in id Software were doing similar jobs before like they made Doom. But then the technology got so advanced that it just took them longer and longer and longer to make games. But then you had console games, which was dedicated by like Sega and Nintendo, really in the 80s and 90s. Like before that, you had the Atari, which for people who aren't or are familiar with gaming, that got destroyed when they released E.T. Basically, that was seen as destroying the video game industry.
And Atari in particular.
And then you had like arcade games.
Of course, arcade games were growing up kind of alongside all of that as well. Like they were doing their own thing, you know.
But that was, you didn't have the power in an arcade machine in the home at that point.
No, not at all.
So like even when I remember getting like Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat on the Master, or no, it would have been the Mega Drive at that stage, and probably Nintendo. And like, I mean, they looked absolutely nothing, but it was still at the same point.
You were like, I can play this at home, and I don't have to keep pumping like 10 pences into the slot. Like I can actually do it, and it doesn't cost me any money, except like the huge initial outlay of hundreds of pounds or dollars or whatever for the actual equipment. And
a lot of games that were on the PC, I suppose, they're nearly text based, or they're just are kind of like shitty kind of platforms. There was nothing
hugely exciting. A lot of them were sort of like choose your own adventure kind of games and that kind of stuff, and it was very like dull sort of middle-aged man kind of games, which that sounds terrible, but you know what I mean. Like,
but that's where it was like Doom was rock and roll. It really was. Like it fucking changed everything, and of course after, because they made the engine available, like there was loads of replica games, and like it changed everything. And of course, with a change in everything, it kind of gave birth to the whole celebrity around games and stuff. And gaming kind of went from being this nerdy thing, I suppose, to, well, it was still seen as nerdy, but it just became more popularized. And of course, then you had Doom 2, which did really well. And like when that was going on, they were making more games similar to Doom, and Doom 3 came out some years later, they changed it again, and it was like slower. Did you ever play Doom 3?
I'm not sure. Was that like really sort of like almost like horror film type thing?
Yeah, it was boring. It was like, we're going to be talking about the movies in a bit, but the movie with The Rock in it would have been based on Doom 3. It was just a lot slower. It was like, it looked lovely. The atmosphere was like, it was another step up with all that stuff.
Graphics and stuff, and design.
It kind of killed the franchise for a long time. But yeah, it's like I've gone back playing Doom just this week.
Recently,
and it's still so good. It holds up so well.
Well, that's the thing I've noticed. Like, I mean, you've been playing away on your Steam Deck or whatever, sitting beside me, and the jump scares are fucking getting you. You're flinching every now and again when things pop up and all the rest, which is, for a computer game to be able to do that, that says something as well, that you're that engrossed and that sort of involved in the whole thing, that you're genuinely like flinching.
I I don't think I ever fully completed Doom. I don't know what... I must have been playing it on the console. I think the console versions were different with it. And it's because there's like... Oh, like the hell level seemed very damn good. And I'm on the last... 2 levels of it at the moment, and they're really frustrating. Because there is this whole thing about, like, I suppose it was new at the time, but this whole thing with the maps and kind of having to backtrack if you get a key opening a door, and they're really big in having secrets, so there's loads of secrets and like hidden walls and all that stuff. So for some reason it got really bad near the end. Like there's a lot of kind of things that you have to click on this to open that door, and it's like puzzles, but there's nothing indicating to you what you have to do.
And at that stage as well, like, I mean, you couldn't just like load up the internet and like, look up cheat codes or look up, it was just like you had to slog away and figure it out, or it was like actual game. I think there was
magazines. There was the game, and there were some gaming forums or message boards and stuff were kind of getting started at that stage, and the people that would have had the game probably would have had access to it as well. But yeah, it's tough game. Like, I mean, it's good. I can't get, like, I mean, I'm going to go on and play their, like, go through them in sequence. And for people that have, like, the remakes, they were going to do Doom 4 after Doom 3, but John Carmack left, and they kind of, I think Doom 4, when people saw it, it looked an awful lot like Call of Duty or something, and they're just like, it started getting a lot of slagging. So they restarted it again. And the Doom remakes are fucking amazing.
Really? Yeah.
You haven't seen me playing it. Oh my God. They're like, they kind of add a narrative to it as well, where it's, this is kind of spoilers for people, where the Doom guy, he's called the Doom Slayer, and he's basically... You find out that he's like a demon as well, that like kills other demons, and all the demons are fucking terrified of him, and the demons are planning on all like fucking nefarious things, but he's fighting with heaven and hell as well. It's just insane, but it's like horrifically violent. It brought metal back into it. Like, to kind of get power-ups, you have to rip things open, or if you use your chainsaw to cut them open, you might get more health power. It's all these kind of things to where it's more of an arena shooter, where when you go into a room, you have to kill everything before you move into another room. Right. But it's very vertical, and so it's very different from Doom, but it's still Doom. It's got the aesthetics, it's got that thing, but it's like the original Doom multiplied. It really did a good job of bringing it into a modern audience. Yeah. And because of the success of that, now what you have is a lot of indie developers are making games that are like a rip-off of the original Doom and the original Quake. And they're doing really well. People are after this new love of them. Like, there's a new Warhammer game that came out a while ago called Bolt Gun, and it's got that 8-bit kind of thing and the feel to it. And people are saying it's amazing. And you got that. So like, the Doom is still going strong, but for some reason it hasn't translated into movies. No, does not. Like, that's a good
Which
game.
Is ridiculous.
Shit movies. Yeah.
Because, I mean, the game itself, like, is sort of its setup. Like, it should be, as you were saying, like, there is mods for Alien and stuff like that. It is that kind of a thing where, like, you're trapped and you're sort of trying to hunt down this scary foe and trying to get it before it gets you. So you would think that would translate incredibly well, but it just did not seem to.
It's what the thing. I think they could have made Doom in the 80s or 90s if they had someone like fucking Sam Raimi or James Cameron do, and just went, right, we're going fucking insane with this fucking thing, because that's what it should be. It's just like ultra gory, kind of like just over the top action, and like, story don't really matter so much.
Loads of jump scares.
It just fucking kill demons. And the movie that they did with The Rock is fucking diabolic.
Well, I mean, to the extent now, I fall asleep in a lot of movies because I'm just old and tired nowadays, but I instantly fell asleep, and I was drifting in and out of consciousness the whole time, and every time I woke up there was some other ridiculous outlandish thing happening, but not in a good sense. I was just like, this is a pile of pants. Yeah,
the only thing that I could remember from it that I had a fond memory of, that I thought, maybe we should go back and look at it, was that there is a third-person shooter segment in it with Karl Urban, and that's done quite well. I thought it was done really well at the time, because no one else had really done it, but when you go back looking at it, it's like it's a bit cheesy. But as well, they based the plot on Doom 3. So, like, in Doom, what happens is basically there's someone fucking... These doctors are fucking around and they open up a gateway to hell and all these demons come through into the world and they're, like, killing everyone on the moon of Mars, Phobos. And it's just the shit hits the fan, and it's like this one Marine is going around trying to shut down the gate and kind of kill all the demons and stuff. Doom 3, they brought this kind of, well, in the film anyway, it was, I can't even fucking, it was like mutation, wasn't it? That they found these relics of aliens, and there seemed to be some kind of fucking genetic thing that could like turn people either good or could turn them, but so you could either be a superhero or bad, and it seemed to be turning a lot of people bad. Yeah. It was just, I don't know, it was just like some of the effects in it were good, but like when you look at the cast that were in it, you had The Rock, you had Rosamund Pike, who was an Oscar nominated actor, you had Karl Urban, who was fucking fantastic and everything. He's actually quite good in it. And there's a lot of other people in it where you kind of go, oh,
they should be good. Something. And I was like, no.
And it's just really, really bad. The action in it's just
appalling.
Terrible. And as well, I can't even remember the fucking alien, or well, kind of like, do you know that there wasn't like monsters? Like in Doom, some of the most famous monsters that are in it are like the Kako demons, which are like beholders from Dungeons and Dragons that have big eyes floating along. And as well as one of the things that with Doom owes a lot to Dungeons and Dragons, because the guys from id Software used to play Dungeons and Dragons a lot, and that's what Quake was going to be based on, was like their campaign that they played for years and years and years and years. But yeah, the movie was just, I don't know, they had none of those things like the Kako demons or the flaming skulls, or they had like one hell prince kind of a thing in it, but that was, and then The Rock, when he kind of went evil, he looked a little bit like The Rock nowadays.
Just a little bit older.
Yeah, you know what? He was just like, his head got a bit bigger or something.
All right.
But it was just, I don't know, it was just
wasn't good.
Bad. And the thing, there's, I don't know, I suppose a reboot that they had, Doom Annihilation, which seems to be made for no money, but somehow actually, it looks a little better.
Yeah, it looks a lot more polished. The effects are actually quite good even nowadays. Like Hell Watch is probably 10 years old anyway.
No, it's only 2019.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was 2009. Yeah. But the effects look really, really good insofar as like for a low budget film.
Yeah, for a very low budget movie.
Blood, as you mentioned at one stage, the blood spatter actually looks, it's proper real.
It was practical effects. That's for a lot of it. Like other than the demon, and there were actual demons. I went back to the original story to it, and it's
for a lower budget film as well, they were not afraid to show all the demons or the monsters or whatever. It was like straight up front. And there you go. Yeah.
Like, they weren't hiding things and in the darkness.
Looked terrifying as well. You know, they were fucking horrible, slimy hellspawn, basically.
No, it's like there was, like, especially with the budget, now, one thing I will say about the film, like, it is shit. If you're
but it's one of these enjoyable sort of.
But it's not as bad as, I suppose, the Asylum movies or anything like that. Like, it's far cry from those. But the last 10 minutes of the movie is really good when she goes to hell. Yeah. And all of a sudden the effects fucking jump through the roof. They're better than I Am Legend. Yeah. For where there's all these demons that are coming out. It's actually better than Constantine, when Constantine goes to hell, and then there's like one kind of demon that's talking to her and saying, oh, we're going to fucking go and we're going to kill all you human scumbags for fucking... And it's like, oh my God. It's just... I don't know if they had to do that for the whole film. Well, it would have cost.
Well, they probably would have blown all their budget. You say if they, I'm sure they're probably holding for the big sort of finale.
But it was just like fucking hell. Like it's because there's. I think you went to the toilet at one point and you ended up going off making a cup of tea and stuff. You were gone for about 10 minutes and you came back and you were like, what did you miss? And I was like, you missed absolutely nothing. So there's a lot of bits in it where they're just walking along down through corridors, or there's the exposition at the start of it cracked me up.
Oh my God, it was so blatantly. It was, this whole thing of show, don't tell. It was exactly the opposite. It was like, don't show, tell. Yeah. And it was just through a dialogue. It's like, hey, it's you again, the person I went out with 6 years ago for 10 weeks, my ex-boyfriend.
And it's like, oh, what? You're still a Marine. Yes. Do you still like science?
Yeah. Yes, you got in trouble there some while back. Would you tell me the story of that? Even though I already know, and I was like, yes, I got in trouble for defying orders and blah blah blah. But yeah, it was very much let's just sit down at a table and let's just talk about the script.
There was a lot of stuff where you could see they were trying to bring in stuff from Cameron's Aliens into it by having these Marines sitting around and stuff, but they never really.
They didn't quite get up to that level of banter because basically they're just, they're all the obnoxious one, basically, from what I could see.
There's not a likeable character in it at all. There is one bit that fucking cracked me up where they were talking about, oh my God, like the power generator, it's only on 2%. If it goes down to 0%, it'll blow up and the station will blow up. And they're like, oh, maybe we should go to, but that'll blow up the moon. And one of them turns around and goes, who fucking designed this place?
Yeah.
So there was bits in it where you kind of go, it felt like they were aware of that.
Some of the flaws in the storytelling.
That it was nearly tongue in cheek. So I think it's worth watching. Like,
I enjoyed it, I have to say. Sometimes like we were watching it and I'm kind of like, oh, that was a pile of shit and I'm never getting that 2 hours back in my life and all the rest. But I think
better than Hereditary. Can you, or not Hereditary? No, Hereditary is great. I love Hereditary. Midsummer.
Oh yeah, no, Midsummer.
The only good thing about Midsummer is when the two old people jump off the cliff that they're meant to. Remember, whereas like it was meant to be a ritual kind of suicide, and they jump off, and they just break their legs, and they're there.
I have hurt myself. I have surely broken my ankle. But yeah, no, I quite enjoyed it, and when it was over, I was like, I just didn't mind watching that now. Whereas sometimes I'm like,
you wouldn't watch it again, though.
No, but it wasn't a case of like some films we finish watching. I'm like, I am disgusted that you made me watch that. I have wasted my life watching this, and how dare you? Whereas this one is actually alright.
It got slated. I think it's got like a 4 fucking on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. But so there's not going to be a sequel. But it would have been. I think
the sequel was actually they set it up nicely for a sequel.
Yeah,
actually,
because basically just hell breaks into earth at the end of it,
and then it's like cut to black.
Yeah, and after the BFG is actually done better in this than it is on the multi-million-dollar movie with The Rock.
See, I can't. Every time it says the BFG, I just think of Roald Dahl, like the big friendly giant,
kind of like a bald Asian giant.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, one of the things that it's like we're talking about at the start of the show that like all the layoffs in games and AAA games seem to, but to understand where the gaming industry has gone, when you look back at the history of Doom as well, it started off with very few people working for it. John Carmack wanted to keep things small. John Romero wanted to expand and get more and more staff, which eventually happened when they were making Quake, which was a game after Doom that they had to build a whole new engine for. And whereas before there was just a handful of these guys and they seemed to, like, they knocked out Wolfenstein, I think, in a couple of months. Doom, I think, maybe in 6 months. So they were like, we can innovate on all these. But then when they expanded for Quake, it took years for them to release Quake. And they didn't release the game even that they wanted to do, that they were working on. Originally, that was going to be this, basically like a fucking, a fantasy game. I think maybe like Skyrim, kind of, but it ended up, they were like, oh, look, let's just have it like in the future, and a little bit like Doom. But then they had to take on more because they were like, we need to take on more people. If the more people we have, surely we can get things done quicker. But what happens with a lot of places when they have more people, then
it just becomes
it's harder to manage, and then you have the human element coming into it when people aren't going to get along. But one of the things they were doing that seems to be a thing in the gaming industry still was that when they were a small thing and they were living in like these little apartments and they were living together, so their offices, they were like living and working in the same spot. They had crunch time, so they were like, well, we need to get this game out in a month. They just basically worked for 20 hours a day. They were living off pizza and they were young. And that became John Carmack's whole thing, was you need to work hard. It was like they expected everyone that was working with him to do like 12 hours, 15-hour days, that you constantly had to go like this. Your whole life had to go into it. And you hear a lot over the years from gaming studios that are kind of collapsing, people kind of putting in saying that they want to unionize because they're
insane working hours.
And especially over COVID, people were saying that they were at home and they were doing like fucking 20 hours, but not getting paid for 20 hours. Not getting, where it's like, oh, here's your thing, you need to do this. But that seems to be a thing from that point in time. I don't know. It seems to be part of the culture.
Exactly. It's just like, as I say, crunch time, we have a deadline to hit. It's like all hands on deck, and you don't eat, you don't sleep until it's done. But equally, you don't kind of necessarily get the extra benefits of like, oh, we'll give you a time and a half for doing it. It's just like, no, just work around the
And the
clock
problem,
to do
it seems to be, that was the then as well was, now I think it's the same with the movie industry, or it used to be with the movie industry. Well, it is the same with the movie industry now, with kind of like a lot of ones with a lot of graphics and CGI in it, because you hear people saying the same stuff about Marvel. People they were saying that they want to unionize, that they're being really poorly treated and badly paid, doing horrendous amounts of hours. But it was like with Masters of Doom, when people were talking that were working in id Software, they were saying that John Romero, when he started becoming this rock star kind of guy, and he was doing less and less kind of say working on the games and kind of more, I suppose, marketing really, or PR, he would make these claims saying, oh, we'll have this game done in 6 months and it's going to be out, and it was like, geez, the game's 2 years away. So people were kind of forced into working for these unrealistic game dates. And I think it's the same. You hear a lot about stuff like EA or Ubisoft, where these games are released and they're not on Bethesda and they're not finished.
Yeah, they're basically just like, it's like alpha, beta and all this, you know what I mean? It's like,
but they're releasing it as a full game. Like, you know, that's where it's on Steam and all these things, where they have the early access games, where you know that these games are being worked on. Like, one of the biggest hits last year was Baldur's Gate 3, which was in early access for maybe 3 years. Maybe
just while
longer.
Develop it and get there and earn the kinks out. And
I think that's the way forward for a game, because people will have, and people that are buying into it, they're kind of like, oh yeah, well, I want to support this, and you can kind of see where it's going. But I think a lot of those things that became part of working on a game through id Software and probably other places around as well, it's still kind of in it, but people have changed. Yeah. Because it's not like this small little industry.
You don't have ownership over it yourself. It's not 2 or 3 guys in a garage like building their own games or anything like that. You're working for a corporation mostly.
It's hundreds, thousands of people working on a game. And as well, people are like, I've gone to college for this. I want to, it's, you know, the passion. It's not the same passion there, because it's just an industry now. Yeah. It's just a job. Yeah. It's not people that are starting out in something, because people are like, well, I've trained for this. This is what I want. And they only see it as, and like you were saying, it's not their game. Why the hell would you?
Exactly. You're not going to break your neck like trying to get something out for someone else. You know, if it's your own game, you might be passionate about it. Yeah.
With it. So I think it's weird, kind of like when I was listening to Masters of Doom, it's weird when they're talking about that, and you see a lot of the same stuff going on nowadays and how it's impacting people. And then when Romero didn't want to be doing that stuff, he basically got fired from id Software over it, because Carmack was like, no, if people are working here, they should be all working the same amount of hours and doing the same that I'm doing. But he was like, I've got a family, I've got a life. We put all the work in to build the company up to this level. Now is the time where we should be able to step back and let other people do the hard work. It's just, I don't know, like next week's show we're going to be talking about the tech industry as a whole. But it's a bit weird seeing it happen again at the moment, because I suppose we've seen it a few times over the years.
A few times.
With like the famous one with E.T. that killed, but that was more confidence that people had in gaming industry, and they were like, you know what, I'm sick of this. And now I think games have become stagnant. AAA games have become stagnant. People are sick of all these kind of like empty promises, and people, you know, and the games come out, they're half finished. They're kind of
you have to pay for fucking, you know, upgrade. You know, there's all these in-game sort of purchases and stuff like that, which is, you know, years ago you buy a game and that was it. Yeah, and you own the game, and, you know. Whereas nowadays,
a lot of the bigger ones now, it's live services they're saying. So it's, you don't actually own the game. You're kind of renting the game. Yeah, you're kind of everything happens in it. So if they decide that they're going to shut down their servers, that's it. You can't play the game anymore. Like Destiny 2. Destiny 2 is perpetually online. There is no offline aspect to Destiny 2. And there's an awful lot of games that come out like that. Diablo 4, like when Diablo 3 came out, people were fucking furious over that, because no one could get online. You had to queue, and it was part of their anti-piracy program. And sure, of course, Diablo 4, I haven't really seen many good things about Diablo 4 from like the community.
But it is this whole thing of like, they want people to be online, as I said, so they can monitor and make sure that like nobody's running like a fucking cracked version or whatever, like, you know. But like, like there's millions of people around the world that don't have a super fast broadband, but they want to be able to play. Or there's people like, I mean, Jesus, up till recently enough in Ireland, there wasn't such a thing as sort of like high speed broadband. It was almost still dial up, and you had to pay, and you had like 5 gigs a month or something like that to use. So you run out of that, you're fucked. Like you've
but as well, even other than
connectivity.
There's this whole thing where some people just prefer playing single player games. I think the industry will probably, after getting a big shock with Baldur's Gate 3, seeing that like an RPG, an isometric RPG that it's after doing so well, that's got hundreds of hours in it. That's a lot of reading, and it's an offline experience. It's totally the opposite of what.
I think everyone is trying to shoehorn it into like, almost kind of like social media is like you had to be online, you had to be interacting with other people, and you had to be doing this, and not realising that the reason a lot of gamers get into gaming is because it's escapism, and they want to just go into their own world where they control everything. And it's okay, you're interacting with like sort of NPCs or whatever, but it's not other people that are ruining your fucking experience. It's like you're in charge of your own world. You know?
I think Call of Duty, to a large extent, give businesses a skewed view of what gaming could be, where they saw, right, this is like what does really well is the online aspect. There was like millions of people playing this the whole time, and they were doing that, but that's not like everyone that's into it. There's a large section of gamers that hate Call of Duty. Now,
I wouldn't call myself a gamer, but like I would not be a person that would be into Call of Duty online games or anything like that. I'm very much I would play it at my own speed, at my own pace, in my own little offline world.
But that's the thing, and like, I mean, now I love Call of Duty. I used to play Call of Duty fucking hours and hours a day, constant for fucking years. But at the same point, I play other games as well, and that was like not a lot of gamers. Well, not a lot of gamers, but like, I mean, I would not be the average gamer either.
No.
And so a lot of these guys that were playing Call of Duty, that's all that they play. It's like people that play FIFA or John Madden or NFL. It's
Fortniters or whatever.
They have their game and they stick with it. But so they looked at that and they were like, well, what's the point in putting money into doing a single player game? Because a lot of times people aren't going to be playing it. We shouldn't, there's no point in developing it and putting all this time into it. And then when they started doing that, sales, I think, dipped, and people were like, where's the fucking single player game? Because there's a lot of people out there that were buying Call of Duty for the single player game as well, or just or kind of for playing it against other people, like not on the LAN, but like friends. That's like, I used to do that with people that it was after meeting on a forum, you'd play kind of against each other, like in your own deathmatch thing. It was more fun sometimes to make up stupid games.
Exactly, and it's almost like, again, that is like your proper form of socialization, where it's like a gang of friends that are like, we'll meet up online every Friday night, and we'll have our own map and we'll have our own teams and all this, rather than just going up against random strangers. Yeah,
and but I think that they took the wrong thing away from that, and they were like, online. That's what people want. And people, then you'll have to pay a subscription, and then it's like, if you can get them into it, they'll pay for like a battle pass where you get your DLC every month, and you can get more XP and you get more, it was just we can sell all these things in it. And I think people are just a little bit fucking sick of it all, because
I think a lot of people just enjoy I don't mean simpler games, but like back to the games of old, the likes of a Doom or something like that, where it's like everything you need is there. You don't need to fucking pay every level to upgrade to a new skin or buy a new gun or something like that. You earn it through like.
Well, that's the new Doom games. They're extremely popular, like unbelievably popular. And like a lot of those, I don't know about consoles because it's been a long time since I played on consoles, but I don't know if those indie ones as well, those first-person shooters, are translating over to there. But it does. You look at it like Starfield, the Bethesda one. That fucking tanked. People were like, this is fucking boring. Like, it looks great, but it didn't do well. Cyberpunk 2033 didn't do great, but that was because it was riddled with bugs and stuff. And fair play to CD Red that they kept working on. Apparently it's meant to be very, like, you can play it on the Steam Deck. But there's, I don't know, it doesn't look good for like EA have had numerous flops over the years. I can't even name some of them because the games just came and fucking died because they were broken as well at the start. But that's when you're putting unrealistic expectations on people to force the game, whereas it'll be done when it's done.
Exactly. You're not hitting a release date target.
and we'll have it and try and work on something fun, because a lot of the EA games like Mass Effect and all those that were done by oh my god, I can't think of the name of it, the crowd that used to do all those, and they did Knights of the Old Republic, BioWare, they used to do really, really interesting RPGs that were like your decisions it felt like they had an impact
on the rest of the game, and the
and they were kind of adult kind of things, but then because they were fucking rushed after kind of like Dune 3, it was like, right, come on, you need to reboot this whole franchise again, instead of just letting it die. And then I think with a gaming company, if they have one or two misses or flops, it kind of...
That's the final nail in the coffin kind
I
of
think
thing,
the confidence with them is after being destroyed, and gamers as a whole they're not very quick to kind of go,
not a forgiving bunch of people, we'll go back to them.
With it. So it'll be interesting to see the way it goes. I think it's going to get to the point where it's going to be smaller companies. Again, indie games are going to start coming to the forefront, like they did years like Minecraft, I think. Geez, that was well over 10 years, 12 years, 14 years ago. Now, and then Indie Game, the movie, if people haven't seen that, we're kind of focused on Ed McMillan, the people that did Bastion, and there was Phil Fish, remember him?
Oh yeah, he wasn't Braid, was
Fez,
sorry.
Yeah, it was your man that did Braid, but all these games that were coming along at the same time, a lot of really interesting, which reminded me a lot of the early, like the Doom days with that, and I think we're going to start stepping into another phase of that game. I don't know, I just have a feeling kind of like following indie games, and some of the games, they're very interesting, they're very different out there, and I think especially stuff like the Steam Deck, it makes it more accessible for people as well, where it's like, I don't need like a fucking $2,000 game machine,
super powered fucking exactly.
And people are realizing, all right, maybe I don't need a game that's got like ultra realistic graphics, because I think graphics are at the point now where it's
you're basically you're at photorealism at this stage, so it doesn't really matter. That isn't the same wow factor it used to be. Now you're just like, I don't care if it's stick figure as long as the playability is.
Whereas there was a big jump from 8-bit to 3D, where I was like, oh my god, Mario can run into water.
I know, and Lara Croft has triangular boobs.
Oh my god, so realistic. But I suppose that's it for this episode. Our little kind of jump into Doom. I was trying to not get into start regurgitating all the stuff from Masters of Doom and giving a whole fucking history of it, because it's out there. It's out there for people to see.
Go and watch.
So look, thank you to everyone for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. We're going to try and do more episodes like this in the future about kind of like things that aren't shite and things that are shite. So if you can follow us over on Instagram, don't forget us a like, and a review would be great. If that'll really help us out. So until next week,
Doom, motherfucker.
Doom.